welcome to Sonic Talk, episode number 401, which sounds like a number that should have some significance, but I have failed to research it. So if somebody in the chat room perhaps wants to see if 401 has any significance into our audio technology world, then good. This week, we're doing something a little bit different. One of two things. We obviously have our usual show sponsors, Isotope, who very kindly will be having a message from them later where you'll be able to win Iris 2, and also announcing the competition winner for last week, where Iris 2 was also up for grabs. But we're also doing something a little bit different, which is a kind of group review of the Blue MoFi headphones, which I think is something that perhaps we've talked about a little bit before as people have got hold of. Now all of the panellists have got a pair. In fact, there's Rich. He's pointing to his ears. I'm wearing a pair. Okay, let's have a check in with ears. So that was Rich. I've got mine. And let's see, we've got Gaz, who's got his box there, and Mark Tinley's wearing a pair too, and so is Robbie. But what we'll do, well, I'll introduce, I guess I may as well introduce the panel. We're going to talk about those a little bit, then we'll get onto the other topics. But I know lots of people have been very interested in these, and they've been heralded as this kind of like brand new revolution in terms of audio and various in terms of listening, basically, and sort of causing a bit of a stir. But let's introduce our guests first. First of all, we have Mr. Mark Tinley, sound artist and creative thinker, who's there in his... I don't know. Look, last time your studio was subterranean. I don't know if it is now.
No, it's not. Oh, hang on. Am I talking?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
I've got these headphones on, and it sounds like I'm not here. Which I'm not, of course. But there you are sort of another thing to talk about. Is it subterranean? No, I'm on the first floor, and I'm very pleased to announce that despite having bought myself a little sub unit which pumps out loads of bass, my Reiki soul therapy next door neighbour on that side can't hear it. She can't hear any of it. And my very quiet, very nice, slightly older than me neighbour on the other side also hasn't heard anything at all. So I've been like really cranking.
Are you sure they're not just being polite?
I thought I'd test it all with Herbie Hancock's Rocket, because that always, the Lin.
All right, so
it's an Oberheim.
So you're the neighbour from hell, and your neighbours are actually not from hell at all.
No, I mean, I imagine going that way, we've just got single glazing there, so I should imagine that everybody at the bus stop can hear it absolutely pounding, but the walls are thick enough that it doesn't go through the walls, so I'm very pleased with that.
I'm very glad to hear that, Mark. That's jolly good news. And I don't know there. Well, Gaz Williams is in the attic in his bass garret. But I thought basement, but yeah, I've said it before. Gaz Williams, course, music technologist, professional bass player, producer, amongst many other things. How are you, Gaz?
Very good. I just went on a quick trip to Paris and did a couple of gigs over there, which is pretty random because I performed with the Fantasy Orchestra, and it was in L'Albatros in Montreuil, which is a really fantastic place. It's a really bohemian kind of setup, really, but it's been there for a long time, and it's where George Melly. It's George Melly. I don't say George Melly. That's a different person.
That's Roger. No.
There's a director.
Somebody else entirely.
The director who directed the very first ever science fiction film, The Man in the Moon. The rocket goes into the moon's eye.
Oh yeah,
it's a really
I remember
famous.
Seeing that,
it's a place where that was made, and I think it's sort of what the film Hugo, which I haven't seen, is kind of based on.
Oh, so a bit of cultural history. And how did the gig go? Did they go all right?
But it was really funny because they changed the times of things. So me and a few others, we arrived about halfway through the gig, and literally walked on stage during the gig and joined in. and I had to, I was singing, and I sang one of the horridest songs in history.
My goodness.
with I think it was about a 75-piece orchestra to sing Rod Stewart's Sailing, which is a stinker. I hadn't even practiced it or even sang it with the orchestra before, and literally walked in after just traveling, walked straight in onto the stage, and then a few songs I was having, and I tried to see if I could make something. I hate the song, and it transpired that everyone in the orchestra hated it as well.
So you did it real justice then, right?
I went down on my knees and I was giving it some, I really kind of, I tried to see how much just ridiculous emotion I could be. We got a standing ovation for it.
Wow. That's
you had to do it again.
Did you have
Don't
to
tell me you had to play it again.
No.
Wow, is there video evidence of this somewhere? I think
there might be, but the next day, quite a funny thing happened. We did another gig the next day, and we did Bohemian Rhapsody, and I got to sing the "So You Think You Can Stone Me and Spit in My Eye," that little bit, which is the best bit, and that was the only thing I was going to do in the whole show, so I thought I'd better make the most of it, and I grabbed the microphone a little bit too. A little bit too enthusiastically, and broke the microphone stand in half, and I ended up with just the top part of the microphone.
So you channeled Freddie.
Mercury.
Wow!
It was a complete accident, and I was trying to and then I realised what I had, so I was strutting around and going, yeah,
Were you wearing a vest?
yellow trousers.
Sadly not. But
that sounds awesome, Gaz. Well, it sounds like you've been having a lot of fun, and thanks for joining us. Right, well, quickly on to our next guest, Robbie. Can you top that?
Well, I've been having fun. I went away for a few days with my portable studio. To start work on carrying on with my album and to see if there was anything wrong with the way I'd set it all up. It was all good apart from I wired it all up the first day and went to plug the speakers in and realised I'd ordered jack to female XLRs instead of jack to male XLRs.
Dear. So that was that. Well, that's not too bad, I suppose. It could have been worse.
Had to troop 20 miles to a Maplins and buy a soldering iron and some plugs to sort it out.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, that's about anyway. Robbie, of course, studio owner, producer, songwriter, and mobile recordist, and also musical director for Howard Jones, where he's building his second rigs and doing all sorts of interesting stuff. Anyway, let's also say hello to Mr. Richard Hilton there in Connecticut, who is also joining us this fine morning. I think is it still morning? It's about 11 a.m. or something, isn't it there, or is it earlier?
It's 11:12 at the moment.
Excellent. Well, anyway, thank you very much for joining us, Rich. Rich, of course, is keyboard player for Chic, Nile Rodgers studio guy. There goes my phone. That's probably my mother.
It's my publicist.
It's my mother, actually. So,
what did you call him?
No, I said it was my mother. She doesn't know that I do a podcast. I'm surprised I heard it, actually, because these headphones have got amazing isolation. But anyway, how are you, Rich? You all right? You did that gig with Shaka Khan, didn't you, in the week? Wow, I saw that and I just thought, my God, she's one of my favourite singers of all time.
And we had Melly Mel do the rap at the beginning of "I Feel for You."
Oh,
the famous, the famous Shaka Khan one. That one.
That must have been something special.
All live. Yeah, there's video evidence of this.
Wow. Okay, I think we'll have to. For goodness sake, go away.
Loaf of bread.
Yeah, no, it's not that. I think it's basically
liter of milk.
It's not that. I don't know who that one was from, but anyway, I'm just going to turn my phone
to
silent. I usually do, but I've obviously forgotten to do that today, so I do beg your pardon. And also welcome to the chat room. We'll say hello to them too, because they are kind of the fifth member of the panel in all together, and there are plenty of them today. I dare I say it's a fulsome chat room, so hello everybody there. So anyway, I'm not going to say any more. First of all, I just wanted to so we're going to take a look at these Blue MoFi headphones. We've all kind of gradually been sent out a pair to try out. Thank you very much to Hillary at Blue, and also all the people that have been involved. And first of all, I just want to show you one thing. This was the thing that impressed me when I first opened it. This is not something I'm used to getting in. This is the box it comes with. It's actually quite grand and feels sort of very classy and expensive. And then I'll just go through this quickly because then we can get onto the nuts and bolts of it. I'm going to open this up because it comes with a few accessories. Now, if I can just get it, I think my sellotape has restuck, so I'm going to look a bit foolish. Okay, and then inside the headphones kind of stand. When you get them, they're sort of standing there like this, kind of on this plinth, and they look really impressive. I think I tweeted out a photo. And then underneath, you get all the gubbins on the inside, which is a soft case. I think ours was I got a US USB adapter for powering these up because these have got active amplifiers in them. Then you get a couple of leads. One lead, which is just a regular long lead, and it's got this kind of this inserts into the headphones, and they can be pulled out quite easily, which and some people might think, oh, that's bad, or you might think it's good, because it means actually that if you pull on the lead, it's not going to break anything, it just comes out, which I think is probably a good thing. And this one's got like a music adapter and a little microphone, so you can use them with a telephone on a shorter lead, and then the other lead comes, which is a very long lead that comes with it. So that's all the sort of accessories. I think I've got everything there. So, I mean, I wanted to try and structure this into kind of what people think of various parts and elements of the review. Obviously, you know, the thing about these headphones is they've got an analog amplifier built in that's matched to these 50 millimeter carbon drivers. And it's got 3 settings. You've got passive mode, which is just a regular pair of headphones. Then you've got on, which engages the amplifier, means that the amplifier is designed to be matched perfectly to the driver, so you get a full range, and you do indeed get a full range, even in passive mode to my ears. And then on plus, which kind of adds a kind of bass enhancement to it, which is it's one of the things that, you know, people are sort of dig on quite a lot, and certainly it works very well in music that perhaps hasn't got a lot of bass, and in other music which maybe has a lot of bass, it adds a lot of bass too. The construction, I'll have to take these off actually. The construction of them is quite remarkable. They're sort of designed in this metal system, which you can basically fit them to the size of your head. And then on the top, there's a little tension screw for getting the kind of the clamp tension, I suppose, because these are covered. They're full cover ear headphones. Usually, I use open back ones because that's the ones I'm used to, which are the Sony MDVs. So these are a bit different to me. And I must admit, I'm very fussy about headphones. I generally don't find headphones that I like the sound of. So anyway, I mean, just as a quick round, what were your sort of first impressions? Because I know that, like Mark, when you first got them. What did you think? What was your kind of initial impression?
My initial impression, I think they, you know what? Because they said blue on the box, I know I'm going to make myself sound a bit blue. Dumb here. No, I didn't think they were blue. I just automatically assumed that because there was no wire in them and they said blue on the box, that they were going to be Bluetooth.
Ah, I see.
So I then spent ages trying to connect them to my iPhone and then realised they weren't.
Awesome.
So yeah, because I've got some Bluetooth headphones, and I thought, oh, these will, you know, kind of be an upgrade to those or whatever. And then,
okay. Yeah. So
anyway, then when I worked out they weren't, then I thought, what's the point of this? I don't understand why they've got this. And then when I heard them, I went, oh. Okay, something interesting's happening in here. So, and then I spent a lot of time comparing them to all my other headphones and trying to decide which one sounded better.
Right, okay. Well, maybe we can come on to the sound of that a bit later. I know, Rich, your first impressions, I mean, because you got them probably earlier than anyone else, because when the first couple went out, you were closer to the warehouse, I believe. So had you come across them before? I mean, what were you expecting?
I had not come across them before. I had... in anticipation of receiving them, done some research with their website and looked at all of their videos that described all the advanced design techniques they'd used and all the rethinking of, you know, breaking the mold type stuff that they did, and all of basically what they intended with it. So by the time I was opening that elaborate box, I had some idea what I was expecting, at least on paper. They really do sound great, especially for the money, but they really sound good, and they're quite comfortable to wear, though I can't say that I've worn them for periods of hours because I'm still reluctant to travel with something this big.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I have 2 sets of in-ears with me anyway that are small, tiny, weigh nothing, and fit anywhere. So as a practical matter, I just haven't been able to justify bringing these things anywhere where I would be sitting with them for long enough to give you a long-term evaluation.
Gotcha.
But for the length of time I've used them, for the vast variety of source material to which I've subjected them, they really, really sound good. I prefer the active on without bass boost and the passive modes to the bass boosting modes, but I understand why they have a bass boosting mode, and I think for people who like that, they will compete very successfully and much more effectively than some of the other headphone styles that do feature very exaggerated basses.
Do you usually use closed headphones when you are not using buds? I mean, if you're using headphones, like if you've not got them in the studio, for instance, I mean, aside from actually playing with, but for monitoring, you use closed ear ones?
Yes, I do. And typically I've been using Audio-Technica, which I like quite a bit. These are very good, but interestingly, for studio use and for podcast use, I've found that my preferred setting is the passive mode, because something happens in the active mode between voice bone conduction in my head and what I'm hearing back in the headphones that doesn't sound exactly right to me. Whereas when I put them in passive mode, I get pretty much what I expect and I'm fine with it. So for recording purposes, I'm preferring passive mode.
Right, okay. Gaz, I know that you also got these, perhaps because you were away, didn't you? So you got them a little bit later. But you've been giving them extended. What do you feel about the sort of construction and that side of it?
Well, construction's great. They are, very, very well made. And I don't think anybody would be disappointed about that, including all the hardware as well. I think I've got a lot of cans here actually, so I have got lots to kind of compare them to, and I've been enjoying comparing them. And for me, they really do the business. I'm very into them. I'll have to say that. There are a few caveats, including being able to.
Yeah, that's sort of a positive or a negative, depending on which way you look at it, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. But it comes out so easy. It just comes out really, really easy. Right. So it's probably a good thing in that it's going to mean that it will protect that, but it does come out incredibly easily. So right. whereas if it just stuck a little bit, I don't know, but it probably is a good thing. But I'm also a clumsy
oaf.
Yes, oaf.
Sometimes.
Where I think they are amazing, I personally think, is the fact that you can plug them into anything and it sounds really, really good. And what I mean by that is I've got a pair of Sennheiser HD650s here, which you really need to drive them with a powerful amp. So if, for instance, you wanted to plug your headphones directly into your keyboard or into your effects unit or whatever it is, some of those things maybe don't have particularly great headphone amps on them. And the fact that these have got amps in them, whatever you plug into, you always get a very full sound.
Right.
And I think that makes them excellent. But something that we haven't mentioned that is also a brilliant studio thing is that if they're in the powered mode, when you take them off your head, they switch off.
Yes, there's a little. If I might be able to find the light. Where is it? There's a, I'm not in passive mode, but basically, when you open them up, there's a little light on the side, and then when you close them, there's obviously some sort of switch in here that allows you. That means that they power off. So I think I should say now that they're supposed to do 12 hours, but obviously when you take them off, they power off. So it feels like much longer, and that is actually quite a valid point.
Yeah. The battery life has been excellent on them. 12 hours is quite a long time, I suppose, of listening, but the battery life is brilliant, and I'm finding that I'm not needing to charge them very often at all, and I think that is probably to do with that thing. But just the fact that it mutes is brilliant if you've got them in a recording setup where there's lots of mics on or whatever, and the dreaded headphone bleed for cans which kind of left on. For me, that's a huge one. I think AKG had a pair. Which ones are they? The K. I can't remember the ones now. 80. Oh gosh. I should have researched that one. And they had the mute function, Robbie, did they? When you take them off your head. No. Okay, big ones. I'll look it up anyway. But I always liked that feature. I've used them numerous times. The fact that they would auto mute when you took them off. I think those ones used the headband pressure on the headband. As soon as there was no pressure on the headband, then that would cause them to mute. But as Rich says, though, they're very big, chunky headphones, and I just don't think that they're you're going to want to travel with them much because
I think they're
such a lot of space.
I think that's a fair point. This might be the sort of thing that you carry on. Okay, Robbie, I don't know. You've had them for a while as well because you've been out, and you are a headphone nut, as you yourself confessed.
Yeah.
You know, you got boxes of them in the attic. As far as that's my vision of your house, it's just boxes of headphones everywhere.
Robbie's headphone emporium.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had them. I think a couple of weeks before everyone because I had them off obviously on the tour, but I've enjoyed them so much. I mean, as soon as I got them, well, Howard got them first. A really nice guy called Kevin came from Blue to one of the gigs and gave Howard a pair, and I was extremely jealous immediately. And being a Blue artist for the microphones, I got straight onto them, and so they came down to another show and gave me a pair, which was very nice. But I was just spending the whole time on the tour, listening to them, you know, like for 8 hours at a time in the tour bus, just listening to everything I had on my iPod or my phone, you know, listening to my own music, listening to loads of my favourite classic albums and stuff. And since then, I've actually, this weekend particularly, I've done quite a bit of work on them. I did a whole day on them on Saturday, and checked the mixes on my speakers, and it's sounding really good. I felt very confident using them in that capacity, which is quite a rare thing to feel that confidence.
I think that's something that's very. I mean, as I say, I'm very fussed. The thing that I've been finding today, because I've not used them in the podcast environment yet, is I've got a pair of Genelecs in front of me, little 1029As, which I use. Like if I have to go over to one of the machines to resize a Skype window, I turn them up. And usually when I'm wearing buds or whatever, I can hear it in the room and it's a certain sound. And what's really odd, when I've got these on, I'm using them in passive mode as well, it actually feels like the speakers are on because there's so much body to the sound that it feels like there's something else in the room that is actually providing them, and that's something that I found kind of quite unusual because, as I say, with headphones usually I'm used to open, so I'm used to hear what's going on, and that for me that's one part of the negatives for it, just purely because if I've got these on and I'm listening to something, I am completely out of touch with anybody, and that takes me on to the net. If you were to plug this into your phone and wear them, you know, like lots of people are wearing Beats in the street or whatever, I would really worry that you might get run over because you are going to be completely oblivious to what's going on around you because you just cannot really hear what's going on outside, especially if you've got them in active mode and they're sort of cranked up a bit. So, I mean, in some, you know, but for studio listening, when you're really focused on something or you want to cut yourself off, absolutely A1. And that, I think, is what they're sort of for. They're kind of billed as audiophile type kind of sound, and you know, as we've all actually said, you know, they do sound fantastic. And the only other thing for me is that the tension thing on the top feels like it's not quite enough. So I just feel like when I've been wearing them for a while, I feel a little bit like my head's in a kind of vice. But that's maybe I'm not used to this kind of headphone feel as well. But I don't know.
The interesting thing for me is my other favourite headphones up till now are the Shure SRH 1840. They're kind of top of the line studio headphones, which are about £400 a pair, so about $600. They're expensive headphones, and I've used them a lot for mixing, and I've been comparing those quite a lot to these. But the thing about these that I like is that they somehow just seem more enjoyable to work with for periods of time. So I think some people have a very, like I recommended these to another studio friend of mine, and he kind of texted me back saying he absolutely hates them, and I really sold him down the river with them. So, but I know the kind of headphones that he likes, and so I could understand why he didn't particularly like them, because he likes absolutely kind of sterile reference type headphones. And somehow, for me, this is the best balance of that kind of very kind of natural kind of sound, but somehow it's got a little bit more enjoyment to it, and that's what I like about them.
Yeah, there's a sort of musical quality, isn't there, Mark?
Yeah, musical, yeah.
It's interesting that you should say that, because I've been comparing them to different things and trying different things, and I've been tracking with them. And the one thing that drives me nuts when I'm doing any recording at home is that I never really feel quite at home with my own voice, if that makes sense.
Right.
So when I'm singing, I always go like, oh, it's not quite right. I wish I'd got a Neumann U87 or a U47. That's what I need for that vocal sound. And I'd need a bit more of this and a bit more of that and blah, blah, blah. And somehow if I put these on and then I put them in active mode, it does this weird kind of, I think they've got some kind of surround sound built into them, or some kind of, there's a slight phase mismatch or a relationship thing that happens there. But for speaking, it feels a bit kind of boxy and weird, but for singing, it's brilliant. It does something that makes me think, oh, I've got quite a good voice. Yeah. And without having to do anything, and then if I want like a bit more oomph, I just click in the bass and bring it, just get a bit more weight to what I'm doing, and so I've been really enjoying tracking with them. And then when I went back to, I've been comparing them to these Sony, God, I can't see that, MDR 7506,
right,
or Sennheisers. Closed Sennheisers. I always use closed headphones because I don't want it to bleed back into the mic, obviously, when I'm recording my voice. Put the Sennheisers on after these, and it's like, oh God, everything sounds really boxy and really kind of flat, but kind of middly in an orotony sort of way. So I'm sort of really warming to them and warming to that. What it does. Are we going to go into what they sound like?
Well, I'll tell you what. One thing we should say, because in the chat room, Rants, I think it said something about DSP. They're actually, the blurb about it said, these are not DSP based. It's analog. It's analog. It's an analog amp on a circuit board. It's matched to the drivers. There is no digital aspect. I mean, it's got a USB cable on it, but that's purely to generate the charge. There is no DSP going on, so that kind of slight. It's not even it's not out of phase, or it's not fully out of phase. That slight sense that you get is something else. I don't know what that is, but
so yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think whatever it is that happens with the amp board in here is a good thing, because the two track you sent 2 tracks earlier on, and I listened to both of them, and I listened to them in passive mode and then in active mode and then with the bass boost on. And what I notice is, and it's not just that it gets louder when you turn the amp on, what I noticed is that there's this whole sense of presence on voices, and it brought the acoustic guitar completely to life, switching this circuit in. It was just kind of like, wow, what happened there? Like the edge of the guitar and the attacks of everything. It's just like, wow, something really good is happening here. And then the sense of space is bigger, which is why I think it might be doing...
Well, I think that would be... That
maybe would be inadvertently a surrounding. But reverbs, the clarity on reverb tails, it's just like, hang on, this whole thing just got brought to life. And then I thought, okay, I'll turn the volume down and match the volumes as best I can. And if I turn the volume of the amped circuit way down, I still got that sense of space, that sense of clarity, and presence on vocals, attacks on stuff. It just kind of there's a it's doing something really. And then I'm thinking, how is it doing that? Because I'm listening on this.
Right.
This afternoon, I listened on my iPhone, and I'm thinking the iPhone, generally, the amp circuit in this isn't brilliant, is it? So I'm listening on my iPhone, and I'm thinking, if it can make my iPhone sound like an audiophile listening device, then this can only be good.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I mean, I think Gaz, have you tried them for mixing and that sort of things? Have you actually tried that? Do you get the kind of... you've been using that as well, have you? That's the...
Focusrite VRM box, which I think...
Mark uses as well, I think.
Yeah, well,
he's got it...
in an interface, yes.
I'm listening to Focusrite Pro...
Which has the same technology in it. Right.
I do have one of those somewhere. I don't know what I've done with it.
The thing with this is that I never thought it, like, say, with my HD 650s or my KRK 8400s, I never thought it drove the headphones enough, and it made the actual weird VRM stuff sound a bit washy. I don't know, it sounded a bit weird, but actually it's given this another lease of life.
Right, interesting.
Because the extra oomph that the headphones give, it's kind of just made them... I've been doing some mixing with them using this, and I've been really pleased listening back to the playbacks on my Genelec monitors. Thinking... Because when you listen to, say, commercial tracks, one of the really nice noticeable audio artifacts of the Blue Mophides is the stereo separation or the soundstage, should we call it? The soundstage feels really, really nice. It feels like it's got some real nice depth to the soundstage.
Well, it's easier to position things when you've got that sort of clarity as well.
But also, you sent us some reference tunes to listen to earlier, Nick. 2 pieces of music.
Yeah, that was KD Lang, Save Me off Ingenue, and Alessandro Cortini, Enough, which is a very challenging mid-range mix, I think.
Yeah, I really struggled with that mix, actually. I really thought it sounded quite poor.
Interesting.
The KD Lang one sounded great, but it did sound a little bit, certainly from a level point of view, it sounded like it was an older kind of master sound. The Cortini track sounded overly mastered to me. It sounded quite aggressive, and I didn't find it pleasant to listen to at all. So
I like that one.
It's interesting. I don't want to dwell too. I mean, I think basically the takeaway we seem to be getting from this is they all. Sorry, Rich wanted to just come in there as well. I noticed.
I have one more thing to say about this that might be useful to people. The active mode sounds great when you're feeding it from for example, a remote, a phone device or an iPad or something like that, and using a normal playback system. But if you're using a enhanced playback system, like I like to use Louder Logic by McDSP, and you use the headphones in active mode, it tends to be kind of overkill because they're sort of accentuating the same things twice. And so, again, in those cases where I want to use Louder Logic, I'll run the headphones passive mode. But when I'm using whatever their iTunes is, I believe still their playback engine, then the active mode actually sounds really good. And some people might actually like the bass boost, especially people who are into dance music.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll probably hold it there because I think the chat room are getting a bit antsy, and we've spent quite a long time on this.
I just want to say two more things.
Right. Okay. Very quickly.
The 2 things I want to say is I don't think there is a surround circuit in here because I did a whole load of tests where I played things down one side and tried to find out if it was going to come out the other side. If there was a surround circuit, that tends to work by reversing the phase of one side and sending it to the other side. And there's no evidence of anything coming out the right side if I send things only to the left. And as far as the bass boost is concerned, I really like it. And the reason I like it is because I like to have some kind of weight hitting my ears. And if I put the bass boost on, I can turn the amps way down. I don't have to listen to everything flat out. I like being sealed in and listening to things quietly, but still being able to have the bass. So I'm not using it to blow my ears and go like, whoa.
Yeah, although you can.
On that. It's just like, it just adds like a whole load of depth to it when you've got the things turned down.
Okay, all right, thank you. Robbie, you just wanted to add something as well.
I wanted to add something very frivolous and say Rich has got the best radio voice with these on.
Yes, his CAD mic sounds absolutely fantastic. I would agree with
that. Nice.
It's got that low radio speaking voice.
Sorry, Gaz.
Yeah, the only one thing I would say is that because of the extra volume, you'd have to be very careful.
You have to be careful,
Yeah, I mean, maybe the fact that you can't pull the cable out could be quite a good thing because they're the loudest headphones I've ever heard. And if for instance you went to a session and someone would give you a signal and they would assume by normal headphone standards that would be a medium volume, it may have been nice to have some attenuator on here.
Right, so you could just turn,
or a mute control, but maybe just the fact.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should quickly say, I mean, basically, they go in the UK for around 279 quid. I've seen them. I should try to find them less, and in the US, it's about $399 US. That's what I found that on Amazon US. And in the UK, it seemed to be the sort of standard price. I mean, I suspect you might be able to get them a little cheaper in the UK, in the US if you shop around a bit. But I mean, those are the sort of
worth it.
Yeah, I think to be fair, it feels like actually a pretty good deal. And like I say, I'm extremely fussy with headphones, and I do find these actually quite enjoyable to use. So, okay, right, we should have a message from our sponsor. That's not them. This is them. iZotope, of course, are the show sponsors, and they've been bringing us Iris 2. Indeed, Iris 2 is one of the most comprehensive sound libraries, 11 gigabytes of sound. We've also got, that we used to have separate libraries. Now you've got a full 11 gigabytes of sound that comes with it. You've got very flexible routing modulations, 5 LFOs, 5 envelopes, 8 macros. As you can see, there's lots of visual feedback, and also you've got access to the sort of Iris way of working, which uses the spectral analysis and the spectral filtering, so you can kind of grab various elements of the sound. You can see, if you're watching the video, you probably see little portions of the waveform being highlighted there, so you can really hone in on up to the 3 waveforms. Very fat sounding. I use the word fat rather hesitantly because it's such an overused term. Certainly, in these headphones, this is sounding pretty damn good to me on this side. But if you want to check out Iris 2, we thoroughly recommend. As with all of the Iris products, there's a 10-day free demo. You could just go to izotope.com/Iris. And of course, we will have the winners of a competition. iZotope also sponsors the competition this week. Last week's show, which was episode 400. Oops, that's the wrong button. Sorry, I've been a bit out of sorts here. Everything sounds so different today. Basically, last week we asked you to tweet Sonic Talk 400 because it was episode 400, and we have a winner. We did try and get 400 entries. We didn't quite match that, but our fallback position was the same one, which was, we pick a random winner. And the random winner this week is a chap called Paul, who has the hashtag @Bashmac. So BASHMAC. He tweeted Sonic Talk 400 at Sonic State and at iZotope Inc. and said, "Congrats on 400 shows, guys. You are great." Well, thank you very much, Mark. And you are now the proud owner of Iris 2. So do get in touch, and we will have the iZotope Fairy drop the codes into your email box, and you'll be able to download a fully functional version. And of course, we have a competition this week as well. We want you to use Twitter for this. I've mixed up. We've added 2 hashtags here. So if you want to win iZotope Iris 2, what you need to do is basically tweet this, which is the hashtag Epic Library and the hashtag Iris2 to @Sonic State and @iZotope Inc. If you're watching, you'll be able to see this. Obviously, there's more characters available, so do add a message there. We do read them, and I know they monitor it as well. So just to reiterate, hashtag Epic Library, one word, and the hashtag Iris2, one word, to @Sonic State and @iZotope Inc. Thank you very much for the sponsorship of the show. Right, there's been some interesting developments. I mean, obviously, Music Messa did rather blot out any other kind of news, but we have a new synthesizer. This is the Moda NF1.
Marcel, the creator and builder of the Moda.
This was a technical overview. This is actually a digital synth, loud and proud, 3 oscillators, all DSP.
Elements of the Moda NF1 synthesizer. The oscillator section is here.
This is just an overview. I won't play the whole thing because it's actually quite dry, and I think they're going to do some more videos of the actual sounds of it. There are some, if you go to the website, there are a number of sound examples also listed. And what's interesting about this is this sort of notion that they're just going, it's digital. We love digital. We think there's a lot to offer. It's loud and proud. We're not worried about it not being analog. It's digital. And I think that's quite it's quite a bold move. But I'm wondering if there might be a sort of little bit of a shift, because we've also got the Parva, which has a lot of digital aspects to it as well. I don't know. Robbie, I'm going to come to you first, because you've been gassing over the Modal 008 and also the Prophet 6. You do have some digital synthesizers. Well, digital synthesis has a place. I mean, we've been using it for years. Be some interest, and you can do some very interesting things with digital that you can't do elsewhere. Is this the sort of thing that you'd be interested in finding more about?
Well, I think I might have been, but because when I got my Eurorack stuff, I made a very conscious effort not to just recreate an analog synth with a Eurorack. I really wanted it to be an interesting kind of diversion from that. So I bought the Piston Honda, by Harvestman, and I've got the Braids by Mutable Instruments.
That's lovely, yeah.
So I've got some of that kind of digital stuff, and it's great being able to have the piping those kind of digital aspects into like analog filters and all that kind of thing. So I'm all for it. I mean, that really interests me, kind of that marriage of everything mashed together. And perhaps this unit is a good way for people who want to explore a bit more of that kind of territory alongside having some sort of capable analog synth. It's a good kind of marriage of the two. And it's nice that it's not a mono synth, because a lot of the digital boutique synths you get that have like a SID chip in them or whatever, are just mono, or they don't have that kind of capability. So nice to have an 8-note poly, I think.
Yes, that is also should be said. It is an 8-voice poly, which is actually interesting. One thing that I will see, I'm looking at the web here, there are no CV connections, so they really are eschewing any kind of analog connectivity whatsoever, which perhaps might be a step too far for some people, but it does have I like the look of it, and they have asked me if I would like to take a look at it, and I might try and get hold of one just to sort of see what it has to offer, because that is my want. I don't know, Rich. I mean, a synth is a synth. If it makes the sound you want to make, I'm guessing you don't care whether it's analog or digital, right?
A step too far. That's it. I'm not buying one. No, it looked like a pretty cool instrument to me. It does a lot of things. I don't know what it costs, but it does a lot of things. I actually liked the layout. Some people were griping about its non-traditional layout. I thought it would be very quick to get around, really easy to identify the things on the panel. Nice the way it switched between oscillators, between waveforms, between envelopes. Supplies a whole lot of possibilities in terms of the sounds. The waveform sounded pretty good to me. I have no complaints.
It's interesting. It's also got formant filter. There's some question about how much it costs. I think it's going to be about €900, I believe. So it's around the $1,000 mark. I don't know what that is because it's a European build. It might be a bit more because of the imports and what have you.
It could be as much as 12.
It could be as much.
For an 8-voice synth that sounds good, that's not unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable, is it? I know, Gaz.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The form factor is similar. Obviously, the layout is different, and this does have more controls to the Parva synth. I should mention that the Parva synth is in its last few hours of Kickstarter. I think this may be, I don't know, maybe 12 hours to go on it. And just to recap on that thing, because I really am very interested in that, and my finger is very much hovering over the buy it button on Kickstarter. The Parva synth is an 8-voice DCO. Well, it's not necessarily an 8-voice. You can get it as a single voice, and then you can add extra voices to it. And if you are in the UK and with the tax, that will cost you just over £800, including delivery for an 8-voice analog unit, which
that's it. Yeah, it hasn't got as much control on it, has it? But it does have those rather lovely looking AMOLED displays. That does look pretty tasty.
It's very well spec'd. Now, the thing that really excites me about that is, I should just make a correction. Last week I said MDE for multidimensional expression, and it should have been MPE for multipolyphonic expression. So that's what it now supports as well. So if you're interested in things like
interesting,
like the Linstrument,
this will respond to it. That's interesting.
Yeah. He's put that in as a kind of, once they reached the kind of Kickstarter goal, he sort of put it in as a reward.
That's cool. Well, if we look there, they've got nearly $80,000 of a $50,000 dollar. So they're in. So that's really good. So I don't know when they're going to start coming on stream though.
And it has USB hosting, which is just I'm banging on about this, and please, manufacturers, please look at this as a way forward, so you could plug an X key in and it responds to polyphonic aftertouch from an X key, power in an X key, so that's such an attractive idea. Just that box, just an X key, very portable and very powerful.
Yeah, that's true. Being able to plug those directly in, that's a nice idea. I know, Mark, you're looking disdainful there. I don't know whether that's just your natural. You're thinking of something else, or whether it's this topic that has.
No, I'm looking at this. Well, first of all, I was a bit put off by the review because he sounded like the Swedish Chef to me, and I kept thinking about the Swedish Chef. If I'd still got my moustache, I could have put on a one of those white hats, done a parody. But I'm not going to do that. When is somebody going to make a synth that does something different?
Well,
do you think the designer of this sat down and went, I've learned how to code in DSP, I'm going to make an all digital synth, and then decided it needs whoever's designed this has thought, it needs 10 oscillators or 10 waveforms in the oscillators, and it needs 3 oscillators. And it should have a modulation on the oscillators. And it's going to need an LFO and an envelope and all those things. And it just looks like they've okay, it's got all the things that a synth would need, but why don't people sit down at the beginning of it and go, I need a sound source, and then I want to do things to the sound source? It looks like it's trying to be a really clever version of everyone else's synth, and it probably is, but it's not ever going to sound anything other than marginally different to the things it's sort of like, if that makes sense.
I think that's a fair point. I think, I mean, and you know, I think that's a fair point. That actually takes me back, because I know, Robbie, you mentioned the Jobo Music Flexion, which is not going to be available till much later in the year, but that looked very interesting in terms of that's just a purely software synth. The idea of creating all these kind of points in a waveform and being able to modulate individual points, just that was kind of an interesting new take on synthesis. And yeah, I take your point. I think that's it. But I guess it's the affordable nature of it that is something that is seductive in this instance, because obviously.
I mean, it looks like a nice synth. I'm just not excited by it. I'm sorry. It looks really nice, but
it should be pointed out on a synth mode that tomorrow's the launch of Omnisphere 2.
Yeah. Well, that's something that everybody.
And someone might be able to help me. I'm a little bit confused about how I'm meant to upgrade, because I can't work out anywhere where I'm meant to upgrade, where I'm meant to buy it, anything.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I'm sure we could find out, and we will do our best to do so. Maybe someone in the chat room will know. Rich has something to say.
Well, I was just going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if they unfurl all of that tomorrow, if tomorrow's the release date.
Yeah,
there's a big countdown timer, isn't there? There's a countdown timer on the website. So.
But if you own all three products already, you can get a special upgrade, and I can't find anywhere to do that. So that's done on.
No, but I imagine that whole commerce aspect of the thing will appear where the release is.
Got you.
There's a big countdown.
There it is. 1 day and 11 seconds. There we go.
I'm sure once that reaches, everything will be revealed.
Everything will be revealed. But yeah, that's something well worth looking forward to. But yeah, that's a good point, Robbie. Thank you very much for that. Okay, let's have, well, we have to talk about this, but just purely because it's an interesting notion. And of course, I'm going to press the button and everybody will probably groan inwardly. This is obviously the news of the Apple Watch, which, it's a very interesting, and we're all, the Apple Watch, I still don't really understand what it's for or any of those things. It seems to me that it's got, the notion is it tells the time, and it also gives you biometric feedback, so you can find out whether you're about to have a heart attack or whether you're not, or all of those sort of things, or running, and which have uses, because a lot of those sort of Fitbits and things will sort of analyze your movement and heart rate and all those things. And I suppose if you're that kind of person with a busy life who already has the iOS kind of thing, then the watch might be of interest. But it's an astonishing notion. But we're already starting to see musical apps kind of becoming available for them. We've got the IK Tuner, which is kind of a cool idea. There's various other bits and pieces coming out, and tap tempo and instruments and those sort of things. I mean, obviously none of this is out yet because you can't get hold of one of these watches. But I just wondered whether, I mean, I know several of you guys are iPhone users, whether you think this might have a place, and whether there's kind of, because you need to have it attached or paired with your phone. I'm not totally clear. I don't know if anyone knows. I'm suspecting Robbie might know a little bit about this, because you are such an early adopter.
Well, okay. This is the only product from Apple that I've never rushed out and gone, I'm going to get it now. But I read a very funny thing over the weekend about this guy who bought a watch and went into the office, and he said he went into the office and he was kind of not going to show it to anyone, and was just going to wait till people kind of noticed it and went, wow, you've got an Apple Watch. And they were all just ridiculing him the whole day. So much so that he felt so self-conscious he took it off.
It didn't quite work out how I expected.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think the watch for me is definitely the product from Apple that I thought, a lot of Apple products, you think at the time, why is it like that? Why does it do that? I don't know whether I'd be wanting to do that with a product like this, like with the iPad and stuff. And after a while, you kind of thought, oh, yeah, I can see this use for it, that use for it, whatever. With the watch, I think it's going to take a while for it to really mature into a product that you actually think, oh, I've actually got some really useful uses for it, apart from changing the face of the design on the face and all that kind of thing. So I think for myself, I'm leaving it a year just to kind of see how it develops. But I think it has it's no doubt got some very clever uses. I mean, a tuner, perhaps that's good. I don't know. Is it any better than just clipping a little tuner on the end of your guitar or whatever?
Using the one in your phone, yeah.
Or all those things. I don't know if it is any better. It's certainly more of a statement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the way that musical applications have been driving the use of these kind of things. Certainly on the iPhone and the iPad, these are definitely big things. I don't know. I mean, is there more of a hoo-ha about this in the States, Rich? I mean, you're probably around people who might be able to afford and desire such a thing, or maybe even have access to to getting hold of them. Is there anybody you seeing any kind of use where it might have some kind of?
Well, I'm no barometer of the social culture in general, so I'm not gonna try to speak in that language. Sure. But what I think I do understand about this product is that it's not really primarily directed towards us. Musicians, guys who use technology for music purposes, things of that nature. It's an accessory device, and I think I might get interested in this product should I ever get off of my large posterior and actually get into a fitness routine. In those circumstances, I might get interested in a product like this because it also happens to, while it's doing that, link to the phone that's in my pocket so that if I get a call, I can just click on the watch and talk. That, be Dick Tracy in American cartoons where they always had the wrist radio and he was talking to his other compatriots. So that's the way it links with your phone, is that it sort of networks, local networks with your phone in such a way that it'll use your phone's connections as a communications device, but it has no direct communications of its own with whatever, network provider that you're working with.
Yeah, somebody in the chat room. In fact, it was. Hold on, I'm see if I can find that. D-Beam, the D-Beam Akai Rhythm Watch. Yeah, that would be really. You could use it as a D-Beam, couldn't you? Maybe that Roland could do a D-Beam application for it that would control over MIDI. Because I'm guessing it would
waving your wrist around for modulation.
I don't know, Gaz. I'm guessing you probably think it might be Tosh.
I tell you what is interesting. I think early reports of people are saying that the actual what are they calling it? The pressure. It's got a force touch or something. Is very good, and that's the thing that's interesting for me, because I think we'll see that coming out on our other touch devices like iPads and iPhones, etc. The idea that having a pressure element. So the watch has that.
Right.
Yeah.
The new laptops are having it, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But to have it on a kind of on a screen as well just strikes me as being a very interesting thing. There's loads of absolutely stunning apps, as we know, but to be able to have that sort of tactile pressure idea as well, I think is very interesting. So I think in a way that this watch is a little pioneering device in that respect.
So it's more things to come rather than actually it. I know. What do you reckon, Mark? Yeah. I mean, I think you're an iPhone user, aren't you? I mean, is it something that would have a place in your life? I mean, I guess we kind of need to be shown, as we were perhaps with the iPhone and the iPad, musical ways that it would maybe relevant to us, rather than as Rich says, just a sort of a way to check whether your exercise routine is working.
Okay, what do I think? So my entry into the world of the PDA started with a Psion organizer, and I needed something portable. So I needed to be able to go out in the world with something portable and enter data into things and then get that back into my computer at a later date. So that made sense to me. Then Apple brought out this thing called an Apple Newton.
Got one of those, yep.
Yeah, which was absolutely disastrous and complete waste of time as far as I could make out. I bought one of those, had it about a week, and went back to the Psion, and then carried on using the Psion for years. And then, so this is like, was it like 4 years later, the Palm Pilot came out. It did the same thing as the Apple Newton, but it was brilliant.
And smaller, yeah.
So what I'm sort of seeing is, and Apple carried that Newton device through a number of iterations for a while, and it never really took off, but it did eventually find a market for itself, albeit in the Palm Pilot and then the Compaq. What are those things called? I can't remember what they're called, because Hewlett-Packard bought
Oh yes, the Dell, there was a Dell one as well, which we used. That was quite powerful.
And then that sort of became everyone who worked in the corporate world had these compact Palm kind of devices that they could write on, and then the BlackBerry that's kind of taken over. So this, the iPhone was a touchscreen device, and that kind of killed off the Palm Pilot.
Yeah, pretty much all of it.
And now that's kind of taken over, and even BlackBerries now are touchscreen devices. So I'm sort of seeing, Apple are going to have this thing.
It's a fashion accessory at the moment. I mean, the way that they're marketing all the different...
pouring money down a black hole and hoping that it's going to take off, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I see with it is that I've been watching The Apprentice quite a lot recently.
That's a UK program. They do have a US version of that as well, I think, don't they? So, just for those international listeners.
I think it's The Apprentice. Am I getting
you're right.
I'm getting it muddled up. No, not The Apprentice. Dragon's Den.
Ah, yes, they do.
Dragon's Den.
They have it with Donald Trump.
But so in this country, we've got Peter Jones. And whenever anybody goes in front of Peter Jones with an idea that's a bit like this, he says, how are you going to hold stock? And I'm looking at the range of watches that they've got. And I'm thinking, how is anybody going to hold stock for that? It's not like this. It's not like that. I just make this in 2 colors with a couple of memory options, and I can hold enough stock of that I can offer people whatever options are available in my Apple store. If the Apple store wants to hold stock, of the Apple Watch, they're going to have to hold something like 38 different models, and then they're not going to hold stock of the one that's like 12,000 euros or whatever it is. So it seems to me like it's a logistic and warehouse kind of nightmare, and it's that kind of thing that investors want to shy away from and not be involved in. So there's a couple of elements there. So there's going to be early adopters who think it's cool and they want one. But beyond that, it still needs to prove its functionality is useful to people in their everyday kind of working or leisure lives. And I'm not sure that it's done that yet. So,
no.
Can I just say one thing, which I think is interesting? Someone was saying to me the other day, if you go and buy like a luxury watch, if you've got that kind of money and you go and buy a Rolex or whatever, you buy a classic Rolex, you'll have it for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever. It'll be a classic watch you're always going to wear. Someone's going to go and spend £10,000 on a gold iPhone iWatch, and it's got what Apple call, what the industry calls planned obsolescence, in that they know that it's got a life cycle of however long before it's going to lose its operating system, and it's just the way it is. You'll go out and buy another one. You're not going to be able to put a new processor in it, because they've already shown that it's all glued in. There's no way of doing all that. So this is the first time Apple have brought out a luxury product, which crosses the kind of realms of just being a technology item to being a fashion item. Yeah. I mean, who's going to spend 10 grand on something that in 3 years won't run the OS, and they'll have to give it to their kid and go, sorry? I mean, that's what we all do with iPads, isn't it? We hand them down to our kids or whatever. I mean, that end of it to me hasn't been thought out.
No, well, perhaps I think it's fair to say the panel has yet to be convinced of this. Right, let's move on to something a bit more music technology, if we can, just purely because we've probably spent a little time outside of that. But I'm sorry to cut you off there, Mark. One thing that did come up that I think again is interesting. I saw this on Create Digital Music, which, if you don't know, is a great site run by Peter Kern, who's a brilliant journalist, and he's posted some really interesting stories this week. One of them is the Google Chrome browser does MIDI, and this in itself, whatever. But actually, it's quite a big deal, and I've got an example here. This is an app by a chap called Chris Wilso. What Chrome have been doing, they've been adding MIDI implementation into the browser. So now actually what you could do is you can take, we've seen various times, drum machines, HTML5 things that run as instruments, but you have to use the keys on the keyboard or, your mouse or your touchscreen or whatever, which we've talked about as being a possibility. What this now does is allow you to add a MIDI device, and I've actually I went to set this up. So this is it here. Basically, it's not a great synthesizer, but this is an HTML5 interface, and there's a synthesizer here, and I've actually got an X key plugged in, which is just here, as a MIDI device, and it's allowing me to select it as a MIDI input to this, which makes it a lot more interesting. I mean, this is perhaps not the best synthesizer in the world, but I'm telling you the latency is actually pretty impressive on this. What you have to do if you want to use this thing is there's a little tag that you put. There's Chrome flags enable web MIDI, and I've never seen this page before in my life. And it's a load of features inside Chrome, which this will work in Linux, iOS, I think iOS, Linux, certainly Mac and PC, and it's a web MIDI API which allows us to sort of hook up this hardware. And this just sort of struck me as, okay, it might seem like a bit of a nonsense, but as we've seen with MIDI, it's, as I think Peter says in his article, it's been with us for 32 years. There are so many things with it now, and now to be able to have it within the browser as well, so that people who are now maybe developing instruments in this kind of environment, it starts to bring that to life a little bit. I don't know what anybody else thinks about this. I mean, I would say the latency is good. The triggering is, I'm not sure whether it's maybe the X key or the communication, or it's not quite there yet. But the fact that we could then actually now interface our MIDI hardware, because in the system that I've got here, I can select, if I just press, I can select the MIDI in from the X key, which is the hardware. That's probably a bit small for anyone to see, or RTP MIDI, which is a network MIDI protocol that I'm running in the studio here, and I can choose either of those as input. So it now will interface with the rest of the world, and I'm guessing some clever programmers are going to start seeing some very interesting things for this to work. I know, Gaz, what do you think? Do you think this has any promise? I mean, I know it's perhaps quite specialised, but actually it's kind of a new software development system for virtual instruments, which essentially opens up to the outside world now.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and Chromebooks. It would make a Chromebook an interesting sound module, then, wouldn't it? Very, very simple, cheap device that MIDI keyboard, Chromebook. It's quite a nice idea. So if that develops, do you think then you'd be able to have different tabs open and have it? Can you set what MIDI channel it's responding to? Is there a way of?
Well, not in this instance, but it may well be. I mean, the thing is with this, if I go to another tab, which may be this one, it's still running. So presumably, it may be possible. There's no reason why not.
If you duplicated that tab, so then on each tab you could have a different thing running. That could be quite a nice idea, couldn't it? Then if you could just change what MIDI output it was coming from, or even be able to create layers and splits. Quite nice. And then you just go between your tabs for your different software synths. I can see that being quite a nice way of working.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's kind of interesting. I don't know. Do you need any more virtual instrument environments in your life, Rich? But I mean, I'm thinking that I haven't had a chance to think about this fully as to what the ramification could be. But I'm pretty sure that some people will show some pretty nifty usages for it.
It could be. I didn't get a chance to use this thing. I did play with the drum machine that we had open a week or two ago.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago. But I didn't get a chance to look at this thing. Drum machines are kind of fun because they're self-generating. You hit go, and then you can start messing around with it, and things change, and it's all very real-time and working. And synths tend to be more, play a note, tweak a parameter, play a note, tweak a parameter, play a note, tweak a parameter. And it may be fun. I can't imagine it wouldn't be fun. But do I need it? Not really. No, I have a few synths laying around.
Yeah, I suppose the thing with this is, if the MIDI implementation, you could perhaps run that drum machine from a clock source, and then it could be part of, your world as just another sound source coming in. And I'm guessing you can aggregate the audio and all of those things because it's just part of this, certainly on OS X anyway.
And if it's practical in a budget consideration in that way, so that people who can't, afford to have, 5 different companies worth of synths on their computer have access to this stuff that wouldn't otherwise have it, then yeah, it's all good. That's fine. If it cuts into people's business, I hope not,
Yeah, well, I suppose that's a good point. I suspect that it might be hard to create really complex synthesizers in it, but I'm sure people were going to be pushing the envelope. I don't know.
Why would you bother with this when you could, like Gaz said, it might make a Chromebook like a good synth source, why wouldn't you just have an iPad with about the billion synths you can get on the iPad that are already there, and then just plug it up to a keyboard and use it?
Yeah,
it just seems like to me, oh, we can do this. It's available to do in the technology, but it's like you're coming into a marketplace that's already totally kind of sewn up and dealt with.
I suppose
it might be an introduction, mightn't it? It might be an introduction to people, and for that could get people hooked into that sort of world, perhaps.
I guess my guess is really, if you can create an HTML5 interface, because this will do MIDI out as well, you can create your own interfaces, from that, and maybe control other items over the MIDI bus from the interaction with the web page or whatever. That's another possibility. I know, Mark, anything you can think of to be useful for, or am I just alone?
Well, I did get it to work actually in the time while we've been on the podcast. I've downloaded Chrome. I've enabled the MIDI flag, and I've got it working. And it's kind of cool actually. It sounds a bit like a Wasp to me. So as one door opens, another one closes. I read this week that the QuickTime library is being dropped from the Apple OS X system bit by bit, and they're replacing QuickTime with something called, God, what's it called?
Something else.
AV Foundation, I think it's called.
Right.
And in AV Foundation, in the OS X version of AV Foundation lives across iOS and OS X, and it's almost exactly the same. But in the OS X version of AV Foundation, the AU MIDI controller part of it has been deprecated. So that means they're just kicking out all MIDI from the AV Foundation. And they're kind of trying to get rid of QuickTime. So if they get rid of QuickTime, which is only 32-bit or not 64-bit and doesn't support various different bits and pieces, as I guess going forward in the next couple of iterations of OS X, we'll probably see QuickTime disappear. And then if they've dropped the MIDI controller part of that, where do we get? I mean, we'll obviously have MIDI drivers on our hardware that we buy, but for the QuickTime MIDI layer to disappear, I think that's quite.
I don't know whether it's a signifier of things to come. I mean, they've got the AVB protocol, which I think will transport MIDI as well. So maybe that's part of what they're doing. So maybe we're just seeing a shift in the actual.
Where I read about this was on one of the DigiDesign websites or the Avid websites. It was basically saying, if you want to speed up your video in Pro Tools, don't use QuickTime anymore. Use the AV Foundation layer, but you'll lose all support for MIDI. And I was like, hang on, what? You can't do that, but they're doing it. So,
right. Oh, well, that is.
So we'll gain MIDI in our Chrome browser and lose it from QuickTime. So it's like it's almost like this is something that shouldn't be dropped. And MIDI, however slow or kind of convoluted or old-fashioned it is, it's actually one of the things that's a standard.
Yeah.
So to go, we don't need that standard anymore. It's another kind of scary.
I can't see that happening. I can't see that happening.
Maybe it's just within that transport.
I mean, maybe we need to all be aware that it's going on.
It would totally contradict them pushing devices like programs like GarageBand and everything, because they still need people to be able to interface with those programs. And to kind of cut the life support off, I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find a little bit more about that in the future. Yeah. But yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up, Mark. It's always because Apple do have a habit of just going, yeah, we've decided to stop this, and then everybody has to go, oh my God, what are we going to do? But I'm pretty sure any sort of MIDI transport protocol inside the OS is going to be a fairly low overhead. Maybe they just can't be bothered to run QuickTime anymore.
Yeah, it's basically to do with QuickTime. So the thing they're replacing QuickTime with so I'm not saying there's going to be no MIDI support in your computer at all, but the thing that they're replacing QuickTime with is got the MIDI functionality, and some of it's been deprecated.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe someone can.
Well, we shall find out.
Straighten me out and tell me exactly what's happening. Okay. I was just kind of.
OMS. OMS. They're bringing back OMS.
No,
OMS.
please,
no. God.
All of us say no, thank you. We don't really want that. Yeah, what a terrible thought that would be. Right, it feels like perhaps we should probably bring things to a close here, and I want to say thanks everybody for your input, and also thanks ever so much for taking time to check out the headphones. Obviously, if you want to find out more, there's the Blue website, and I think it's MoFi Headphones, if I've got it right. I'd have to check that. I think I probably mofiheadphones.com if you want to find out more about these kind of things. And as we said, the panel kind of gave it pretty much a thumbs up. There are some caveats, but generally speaking, kind of pretty nice sounding things. So if you're in the market for headphones, give them a listen. I'm sure there's a place where you can find out what they sound like. So it's time to say thank you and goodbye. Before I do, I will just say once again, do enter the competition, iZotope Iris 2, obviously show sponsors. You just need to tweet the hashtag Epic Library and hashtag Iris 2 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. For a chance to win Iris 2. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I'm going to say, first of all, we'll go to Rich Hilton, who's probably got to zoom off to the studio and do some important musical production work, no doubt. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Always great. Enjoyed it. Great seeing you guys.
And also, Robbie Bronneman, thank you also for joining us too, and for your input. And I hope your week is a fruitful one, and you get your lead sorted out for your mobile recording setup.
It's all sorted.
Excellent.
All sorted.
I knew it would be. And of course, Gaz Williams, I think I'm seeing you tomorrow. Actually, we're going to take a look at the Korg Little Bits additional interfacing options, I believe, if that's correct.
Yeah, cool. And I'll just give you a quick glance at my latest gadget.
Oh, what's that? Is that DJ thing?
Yeah.
I remember that.
I know. It's like, I think it's a design classic. I've been banging on about this to Robbie for ages, but this came out about 7 years ago or something like that. Killed off by the iPhone, but it's a sort of standalone DJ unit with 2 decks, 120 gig hard drive. And actually, having used it for a bit, it's a really pro piece of kit, and you can get them for next to nothing now.
What's it called?
It's called the
Pacemaker.
And I think this is
Pacemaker.
That's right. I think this is probably why it did die a death partly. Pacemaker. How awful a name. Maybe in Sweden where it was made, that didn't have the same connotation.
I do remember seeing that at NAMM. We did a piece on it, and it was really popular. Yes, I remember a long time back.
It's an awesome thing.
It does
an
look very
awesome
beautiful.
thing. And you could use it in a musical way.
It's got embedded Linux in it, hasn't it? Yeah, it's got embedded Linux, I believe.
And you can do all sorts of time stretchy things, and there's loads of effects in it. So it's really, I'm amazed by it. And
Are you going to start using it in your mobile setup then, Gaz?
Yeah, I have already. But the reason for getting this, though, really was because at certain gigs, people sometimes ask for DJs. And
so you put the Lionel Richie collection on it for those difficult...
He puts Rod Stewart Sailing.
Oh, no, never again.
The remix.
I have got some Lionel Richie on here, though.
Actually. Well, glad to hear it.
In the Commodore's form.
Yes. Anyway, well, thank you very much, Gaz. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And also, Mr. Mark Tinley, thank you also for joining us. Been a pleasure to have you on, as usual. Thanks for your input.
You're very well. I'm reading about Watch Band now.
Okay.
I just find this absolutely extraordinary. It says that you've got a full 88 key piano on your watch.
That sounds interesting. I'd imagine swipe for octave is probably a challenging part of that whole operation.
Really.
Well, anyway, Mark, thank you for
having me. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And before I go, I just want to say, for those of you who perhaps don't know, we've also launched a sort of mobile version of the site. So if you're seeing this in the future, this is in a sort of adaptive design where you can now basically look at it on your mobile device. You've got the opportunity to switch back to the desktop if you can't get on with it. But we figured one of the reasons is if you don't know and you do run a site, Google have just introduced a kind of SEO penalization algorithm. If you haven't got an adaptive web page that works with mobile, then your search engine rankings go down. It was rather hastily put together, and it was a little known fact because I've spoken to a couple of other people who go, really? Oh God, we better get on with it. But anyway, if you want a mobile version of the site, hopefully that will make browsing a little bit easier and for you. So once again, thank you very much for joining us this week. That was Sonic Talk number 401, and I shall now fade to black. See you later.